Chase Madar, our next guest on the Black Tower Show. He's author of this book, The Passion of Bradley Manning. He's an attorney in New York, a frequent contributor to the London Review of Books, American Conservative Magazine, and Counterpunch. And he tells the story of Bradley Manning. If you don't know who Bradley Manning is, well, Bradley Manning was an officer, and he was in Iraq. And he's a young soldier. He's going to be court-martialed for sending 750,000 military and diplomatic documents over to WikiLeaks. You ever heard of that place, Jake? Our guest, Chase Madar, on the Black Tower Show. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today.
No, thanks for having me.
Author of The Passion of Bradley Manning. All right, tell our listeners, let's unfold this story. For those who don't know, we know who Bradley Manning is, but explain who is Bradley Manning. Talk about all of these documents that were sent over, and let's get this story underway.
All right, well, Bradley Manning, he is a 24-year-old private first class from the small town of Crescent, Oklahoma, and he is the alleged source of all those juicy WikiLeaks documents about the war in Afghanistan, the war in Iraq, and the State Department cables, too, that show the inner workings of U.S. diplomacy all over the world. And since these documents have come to light through WikiLeaks and through WikiLeaks' partner organizations like the New York Times, The Guardian, El País, and Le Monde, people in government have been screaming bloody murder about how damaging this is to the United States, how harmful it is. And then after a little cooling off period, there's a sheepish admission, usually from some government spokesperson, whether from the Pentagon or the State Department, that actually no real damage seems to have been done. It doesn't look like any of our Afghan collaborators have been harmed or injured or killed. Doesn't look like any of our troops have actually been harmed in any way. Doesn't look like there's been diplomatic Armageddon after all. So this is controversial. There's a prominent perspective in government and in big media that the more clueless we are as a country, the less we know, that makes us somehow safer and stronger. Maybe you want to bleep what I'm about to say out because it offends some people, but I don't think it's such a bad thing to know what your government is doing. I think we've paid a heavy cost in the past 10 years in particular for being clueless and for making some poorly informed decisions with catastrophic consequences. And that's why I wrote this book, The Passion of Bradley Manning.
Our guest on the Black Tower Show, Chase Madar, author of The Passion of Bradley Manning. So Bradley Manning is a scapegoat, correct?
Oh, absolutely. I think he's being set up as a kind of a national fall guy for all the catastrophes that we've inflicted on foreign peoples in Iraq and in Afghanistan, and the catastrophe that we've inflicted on a great many Americans. 4,500 U.S. soldiers killed in Iraq, about 1,500 killed in Afghanistan, and another couple thousand military contractors. And there's no responsibility or accountability whatsoever for the people who have launched us into these wars under phony pretexts and kept us in Afghanistan despite its obvious failings at this point. Instead, this is getting blamed on WikiLeaks and Bradley Manning, as if this is the real cause of our foreign policy problems and all the blood that we've shed, both our own and foreign people's. And it's ridiculous.
Our guest on the Black Tower Show, Chase Madar. If you'd like to call in, the number is 585-637-7040. Now, included in some of the documents that Manning gave to WikiLeaks, torturing prisoners, the gun sight video, unclassified but buried in classified material of an American Apache helicopter opening fire on a crowd on a Baghdad street, gunning down a dozen men, including 2 Reuters employees, and injuring more, including children. And this is from the article you wrote, Chase Madar. So
yeah, that's correct. That video is just essential viewing, and different people make different things out of it. That's fine. That's to be expected. No one is claiming that this is, the only point of view on the Iraq War. But we need to see what our invasion of Iraq has entailed, what it means to occupy a foreign people, to liberate them. And this video shows it. And it's a powerful thing. And I think it shows not only the damage that we've done to the people of Iraq, but the terrible situations we're putting our soldiers in.
People don't want to see the truth, though. They don't want to see the gun sight video. You just turn a blind eye to that. No one wants to see that and really understand what their government is doing.
That unfortunately is an all too common reaction. I mean, the video's gone viral. It's been the most famous wartime atrocity.
They do want to,
the July massacre in Vietnam, and millions of people around the world have seen it. And a few million people inside the United States have seen it. But it is a patriotic duty, not just a right, but an obligation to know what the hell your government is doing, both at home and abroad. And WikiLeaks is a powerful tool to bring about that kind of knowledge. And that's why I think Bradley Manning, the accused source of these leaks, deserves the Presidential Medal of Freedom, not a prison cell.
I wonder if over time Bradley Manning will be seen as a hero.
I think it's quite possible. I mean, this is a typical boomerang of how people greet whistleblowers. It's very common to first accuse them of the very crimes that they're revealing, to scapegoat them, to blame them, to call them crazies. Whistleblowers are always pathologized, medicalized, psychologized. People love to ignore their real political motives, even if they're right out front, as Bradley Manning's were. But I think in 20 years' time, Bradley Manning will be properly viewed as the hero that he is. And the same thing happened to Daniel Ellsberg. He was viewed by so many in this country as a traitor, as a saboteur, as someone who is putting our troops at risk. Every bad thing that's being said about Bradley Manning was said about Daniel Ellsberg.
Our guest on the Black Tower Show, Chase Madar, author of The Passion of Bradley Manning, is an attorney in New York. You contribute to the London Review of Books, American Conservative Magazine, and Counterpunch. I'm joined by Jake Fox.
Hey, Chase. We've gone through a massive culture change in the United States since the 1970s, when Seymour Hersh exposed Nixon's domestic surveillance program. Congress didn't question where the leak came from, or they didn't want to put Seymour Hersh in jail. They wanted to fix the problem, and America was behind Congress and wanting to fix that problem. Today, we are putting leakers in jail. We are trying to aggressively trying to try people under the Espionage Act, patriots that want to help America because illegal things are being done. Why are people so apt today to want to prosecute people who are exposing illegal deeds by our government?
Thank you, Jake Fox, for that intelligent question. Two reasons. First of all, there has been a political change, even though the culture has become more liberal and more accepting and more tolerant. In some ways, we're a long way away from the high water mark of American political liberalism that we had in the 70s, so that there's been a sea change since the time of Dan Ellsberg. Second of all, the era that you're referring to, the early to mid-'70s, when there was serious action to investigate government wrongdoing and abuses by the executive branch of the national security state apparatus, this was done under very specific political weather conditions. You had a really unpopular Republican president, and you had a very energized Democratic-controlled majorities in both houses of Congress. And in conditions like that, Democrats actually put some teeth into their usual blah-bitty-blah about civil liberties and about reining in unchecked executive power. Now with a Democrat in the White House, there's just a different set of conditions. Democrats have lost interest, by and large, with civil liberties and with the abuses of the national security state. You have people like Senator Dianne Feinstein, Democrat of California, leading the charge to prosecute whistleblowers and leaks. I have a feeling that the Democrats in Congress would be singing a very different song if we had a President McCain right now, or as they did during the Bush-Cheney years. So I blame the Democrats to a large degree, who make great noises about civil liberties and unchecked executive power when they're in the opposition. But as soon as they get their hands on the reins of power, that just goes out the window.
It's hard for me to believe that there's not some disinformation, psyop going on here. When after Collateral Murder, which kind of reeled people in, a lot of the WikiLeaks cables were of Russia has a close relationship with organized crime. Iran and North Korea are trading, involved in arms trade. There was a cable that came out with estimates on civilian casualties in Iraq, which were 10 times below conservative estimates at the time of what was really going on there. And the rest of it was just kind of gossip about what U.S. diplomats had to say about this leader or that leader. I mean, what do you think is really going on here when a private had access to all of this information?
Well, it's important to realize that most of these secrets they weren't that secret. There are about 850,000 American citizens who have top secret security clearance and can get into the SIPRNet and could access this kind of information. So the idea that's been put about by our hysterical big media and by the government that these are somehow deep, dark, top secrets is entirely false. And a lot of it is just low-level kind of ground-eye view from chief consuls and diplomats. And it's good that we know this. I'm not trying to put it down or say that it's worthless, but not a single one of the documents released by WikiLeaks is top secret. That attains that highest ranking of secrecy. So I don't see any conscious, deliberate disinformation campaign. I see an angry government upset that some of its incompetence has been exposed, and a compliant media that doesn't want to fight them or resist them and is going along with the hysteria and alarmism.
Another thing to add on to what I said earlier, Julian Assange is accused of sexually assaulting or raping, I believe, a woman in Switzerland. And Sweden, I'm sorry. And she wrote a book on how to entrap men. And she used to work for the CIA. These are ringing alarm bells in my head, Chase. I got to say that.
Something's going on.
When this first came out, I was very much convinced that the main accuser was working with the CIA. Now I think it's not impossible, certainly possible, given her connections in Cuba, where she spent some time. I'm not sure if it's the case. I think this may be, just what it is on the surface. I think that Julian Assange should not be sent to Sweden. Ideally, he would face the charges there, but the risk of being extradited to the U.S. is very high. There's a grand jury that's been impaneled in Alexandria, Virginia, to investigate what they can throw at him, what they can charge him with. Whether or not they've come up with a sealed indictment is not known. But we do know that the Australian government has actively been preparing for this eventuality, that their citizen, Assange, might get charged. And, he has very legitimate worries and reasons not to want to be sent to Sweden. And the whole political manipulation of that process is pretty disgusting. And that's not just my opinion. That's the opinion of the former Stockholm Chief District Prosecutor, Sven Erik Alhem, who called the decision of the Swedish government to extradite Assange unreasonable and unprofessional, as well as unfair and disproportionate, because they could easily question him in the UK.
Our guest on the Black Tower Show, Chase Madar, author of The Passion of Bradley Manning. He's an attorney in New York, a frequent contributor to the London Review of Books, American Conservative Magazine, and Counterpunch. One point I want to make is that it's important that American citizens know what's going on at the fringe of our American empire. We talked to Chris Hedges not too long ago, and he was saying that we need people to report. We need to know what's going on at the very fringe, at the very edge of our American empire, because then we know how our destruction, our violence, our guns are being used out there. And I think it's important, in Bradley Manning's case, kind of acting as a journalist, essentially, I guess, reporting on what is happening out there. If that gets into the wrong hands, then all of a sudden we are the truth that we're seeing is controlled, and we need honest. We need an honest view of what's happening at the very fringes of our American empire. If that line is cut off, if that line of information is cut off, then we're in a scary place. And I think that's where we are now.
I think we're certainly there. And again, some people have reacted to WikiLeaks by worrying that they've ruined our reputation abroad, that they're bringing ugly things to light that foreigners will see. I think this is nonsense. I think the foreign press is already pretty clear about what Washington is doing in places like Afghanistan and Bagram Prison and Guantanamo and all over Iraq. It's Americans who are left in the dark. And that's often why things are classified, not so foreigners will be in the dark, but so we, the domestic population, will be kept out of the loop. And that's a dangerous thing indeed. I want to make clear that the idea that you should know what your government is doing, this was not invented last week by Julian Assange. I mean, it's a really old idea, and it's been a central part of the American political discourse for literally centuries. It was James Madison who wrote that a popular government without popular information or the means of acquiring it is but a prologue to a farce or a tragedy or perhaps both. Knowledge will forever govern ignorance, and if people who mean to be their own governors must arm themselves with the power which knowledge gives. And the James Madison of which I speak, he was not Noam Chomsky's teaching assistant in the Summer of Love. He's the primary author of our Constitution and the fourth President of the United States.
There you go. Our guest on the Black Tower Show, Chase Madar. If you'd like to call in, we have a few more moments here with Chase Madar, author of The Passion of Bradley Manning. If you'd like to call in, the number is 585-637-7040. Joined by Mr. Jake Fox.
After reading a lot of Israeli periodicals and obviously living in America, I would say that the United States and Israel are two of the most illusioned populations on Earth with respect to what's going on outside of the country or what the actions of their country are. I would say that we need more transparency. We need more people like Julian Assange. We need more people like Bradley Manning on the inside. What is Bradley Manning's treatment? What are they? How are they treating him in jail right now?
Well, amen to all of what you said. How are they treating Bradley Manning? Well, he's out of isolation confinement, which is the important thing. And for the first 11 months of his captivity, he was kept under severe and punitive solitary confinement. And there was a line of bull coming out of the Marine Corps brig at Quantico where he was kept saying, oh, well, it's for his own good. It's prevention of injury watch. We're really looking out for him. And this was, mouthed by President Obama himself. And we now know that this is complete crap. You have the brig psychiatrists. Their emails have come to light saying, no, there's no medical reason whatsoever, and this is harmful to Bradley Manning. And this is only being done out of a spirit of vindictive punishment, and there's no reason for it. So it was due to pressure, both from Americans and a lot of overseas pressure, that got him moved to the medium security general population brig at Fort Leavenworth. Now he's in medium security, non-isolation, in near Fort Meade, Maryland, which is where his trial proceedings, his pre-trial proceedings are happening now. The court-martial is going to happen probably in February.
Is there any evidence of any sort of, in the past when he was in isolation, any evidence of sensory deprivation like they did to Jose Padilla, which eventually drove him insane?
Nothing as severe as the way Padilla was tortured, and I use that word advisedly, because Padilla was tortured by any meaningful sense of the word by the U.S. government. I think sustained isolation confinement is also a form of torture, but he was not put in sensory deprivation gear. He was treated in a horrible way for his 11 months of confinement. For part of it, he was deprived of his clothes and put in a kind of plastic smock, deprived of his glasses. For the whole time, he wasn't allowed even to do sit-ups or push-ups in his cell. And what I find one of the most chilling things is while he was awake, he had to respond in some way every 5 minutes to a prison guard's question, "Are you okay?" And that's the kind of thing that going on for nearly a year could drive anyone insane.
Oh, my goodness. Can you imagine being in there? Are you okay every 5 minutes?
How is that not torture?
Absolutely. This is a typical pattern of the way whistleblowers are treated and political dissidents, whether in the old Soviet Union or here today. Instead of looking at the political reasons why people have leaked something or blown the whistle, they are classified as loonies, as crazies. And there's a lot of crap in our media, which has been happy to oblige the government, as usual, looking into Bradley Manning's psychology and just ignoring his upfront political motives. Manning wrote in his chat logs with the informant who turned him in, "I want people to see the truth, regardless of who they are, because without information, you cannot make informed decisions as a public." And he hoped that the leaks would lead to, quote, hopefully worldwide discussion, debates, and reforms. And I got to tell you, after 10 years of pretty serious disaster in American statecraft and foreign policy, I fail to see what is so objectionable about making better informed decisions and about putting an end to the extreme government secrecy that we live with. Washington classifies 92 million documents a year. We are not a free people while this goes on.
I mean, obviously the argument is that complete transparency would mean that we'd be abolished, or our country would be destroyed, and if all that stuff. I mean, what's a fair level of transparency? Should there be no on one hand, you have no transparency, then you have complete transparency.
Well, I'd say that the balance between what is revealed and what is kept top secret is out of whack. The Obama administration spends 100 more times money-wise on classifying information and keeping it top secret than they do releasing it to the public. So you got 100-to-1 ratio there. That's a huge imbalance, and it needs to be corrected. There needs to be a real balance there.
Absolutely. I think that's a very fair question. I don't think anybody is after total transparency, and I think Julian Assange, even after 4 whiskeys, would not say otherwise. No. And if you look at WikiLeaks' mission statement, you don't find any call for total transparency. What you do find is a call for an essentially defensive and pragmatic call for greater openness, but not total openness. I think we all agree that we don't want nuclear launch codes floating around. I mean, no one's going to argue with that. But I have to make clear, just to put things in perspective, what Manning is alleged to have leaked, it doesn't even amount to 1% of what Washington classifies in any given year. We're talking about a focused flashlight that's been shown, not some massive floodlight that's destroying the workings and functioning of government.
Chase Madar, our guest on the Black Tower Show. He's the author of The Passion of Bradley Manning's Attorney in New York, frequent contributor to the London Review of Books, American Conservative Magazine, and Counterpunch. We'd like to thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today.
Hey, great chatting with you. Thanks for having me.
Great. You take care now.
Take care now. Bye-bye.
Chase Madar on the Black Tower Show. We're broadcasting 1590 AM WASB Brockport, Rochester, 1310 AM WRSB Canandaigua, Rochester. And we'd like to thank our sponsor. Go down and see Tony at Galleria Pizza. Me and Jake just went down there the other day. Did we go down there the other day?
We went down there the other day.
What did you get? You got something.
A slice. He's known for his slices during lunch hour during the week. Go down there, get a slice, pepperoni. Oh, it's so good.
Boom.
He goes heavy with the sauce.
Boom.
I'm a big fan of sauce.
16 East Main Street, Galleria Pizza, inside the Reynolds Arcade. 18 years operating downtown. Like Jake said, specializing. They have a great lunch special there. So Galleria Pizza, proud sponsor of the Black Tower Show. We had Rosa Corey. We talked about Agenda 21. And I got really scared. And then we talked to Chase Madar, author of The Passion of Bradley Manning. And then I got even more scared. And there's just, I mean, if you enjoy this kind of program, I encourage you guys to call in. If you'd like to be a sponsor of the show, we need all the help we can get. You know, I'm not going to sit here and beg, but any help is great help. We have Galleria Pizza, so you can call in anytime. You know the number, 585-637-7040. Jake Fox is here. Did you enjoy the show, Jake?
I did, and it really highlighted what the bar is for torturing Americans now in our country.
Are you okay?
Well, I mean, in the late 90s.
Are you okay?
I don't think so. I'm not okay.
Are you okay for 6 months of that? Continue on, sorry. I was trying to... I won't torture you, Jake.
Thank you. In the late 90s, we had if Bill Clinton decided to make an executive order where he could indefinitely detain Americans without trial, that would have been met with crazy outrage.
Oh, no.
It would have been front page.
Oh, yeah.
Now it's, do we farm out our torture to third world countries
Sure.
so they can gather information for us? That's the question now.
Oh, we're torturing all the time. You're going to see even more torturing.
Rendition is now the bar.
A lot of people are like, we need more torturing.
That's a lot of people. Over 80% of people are for unmanned drones to be used in the United States.
Boom.
It's crazy.
It's all happening here.
We're falling apart culturally. I can see it. If you're that apathetic, where drone, you're okay with drones, you're okay with torture.
Bring on the drones.
Let's just trash Ronald Reagan. Let's just throw Ronald Reagan under the bus, right?
Sure.
Who cares about Reagan? The same people who worship Reagan so much are the first people to want torture.
Right.
Ronald Reagan wrote the UN torture outlines. Ronald Reagan did that. I mean, was he a crazy, kooky liberal? No, he wasn't. He was a man with principles, wasn't he? You remember
That's right.
that. Growing up in the 80s, being an adult in the 80s. So, people, let's...
Wake up, people.
Wake up.
It's
please.
the Black Tower Show.